What's going on, guys? We're going to talk about how to program EMOMs, what the EMOM is, why it's so popular, how long it's been around as an implementation. Now, when we think EMOM, most people think back to the Tabata being 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, set for intensity, invented by the Japanese weightlifting team, looking to get their weightlifters to be more intense in shorter efforts. And they found that 20-10 option kind of the most effective way to attack intensity for the short time domain of 4 minutes. Now, we're going to look at today is why perform EMOMs in general. Why do EMOMs? Why not just do AMRAPs or for time workouts? And I always find that they're quite efficient. EMOMs are a good way, especially in a class format, to put people into, a set station and let a timer demand them to change. I don't know if you've ever coached many classes, but one thing that no matter how difficult a client can be, they will always listen to the timer. So when the timer starts, they will start. So the EMOM can be a really good way to get a class to do the thing that you want to do based on a time domain. It's also a good way to split up big groups. If you have huge groups of people and you need to split them between multiple stations, and you don't have that many pieces of equipment, you can add them, 5 different stations, 6 people per station, and get them to rotate on the minute. From there, sets the intensity of the workout. Setting the intensity of the workout, unlike an AMRAP where people can kind of just like cruise through, not really give a shit about how fast they're going and kind of just get an exercise session done. With an EMOM, it forces them to work for a certain period of time and they get rewarded with rest. Obviously, the less amount of intensity or the lack of intensity that they put in to the working period, the less rest they're actually going to receive. So it forces people to actually push in workouts, and it can be a great way to, as the coach, to implement intensity components without people really knowing that that's what they're actually for. Finally, progressive overload. You can easily progressively overload an EMOM, and we're going to cover a few different ways to do that. Variations of EMOMs, different types of EMOMs, as I spoke about in the beginning of the video. Tabata with the typical 8 rounds, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, or 8 rounds, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. This can be a great way, like I said, to produce maximal power with minimal rest and repeat sets, getting that dense volume in. It's more commonly seen with ab stuff these days, like crunches, planks, hollow holds, etc. But you can do it with things like deadlifts, pulls, depending on the percentage you're trying to work at and your training goal. From there, we've got the actual EMOM itself, performed every minute on the minute or every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to infinity. You can do any variation of EMOM, every 2 minutes 30, every 5 minutes 50. Really what it's up to you as long as you have your training goal in mind. Last one is a bit more of a unique one. It's actually more invented by CrossFit. It's the 2-2-2-3 interval. So it's 4 lots of work. And you might argue that this isn't really an EMOM, but I'll argue against you. And it's really just an every 3-minute component with a 1-minute rest for the first 3 rounds and the last round giving you that 3 entire minutes to try and complete the amount of work. With these components, normally they have an accumulation goal. So it might be accumulate 50 power cleans at 60 kilos after a pre-fatigue amount of work, a couple of cows on the bike or a bit of a run. Something that comes before it makes you work really, really, really hard to try and get those reps done. You get to rest a minute and then you get to go again. And obviously by the last round, you want to be close enough that you can complete that amount of work. So they're variations of EMOMs, and you can see a few more variations, but they're just the most common ones that we kind of come up against. EMOMs are most efficient with couplets and triplets. You can have chipper workouts, and obviously you can see on the screen, we've got Fight Gone Bad at the bottom. I don't know if it's too clear, but that's got 5 different movements in it, and that's a very effective workout. But generally I find with EMOMs and programming EMOMs, it's really easy to do it with couplets and triplets. Nothing beats the classic row burpee EMOM combination that Jason Khalipa popularized back in the 2014, 2013 era of CrossFit, where he would be rowing like 22 cows on 1 minute and performing 22 burpees on another for 20 minutes or more. Quite an insane feat of endurance and metabolic conditioning, but for us normal people, that's pretty unattainable in a lot of stages. So I like that because it's just 2 movements back to back. Seeing a 3 movement workout could be something like running, kettlebell swings, and pull-ups, adding each different modality into the workout. They can work, but I just don't find it as effective as a couplet. It's the easiest way to get the most intensity out of your EMOMs. So the couplets and triplets are normally what you see. You will see some single modality stuff. Like I said, you will also see some chipper stuff, but generally it's couplets and triplets that are going to be the cornerstone of your EMOM. Let's go into progressive overload. So I spoke about in the start that there is easy ways to progressively overload your EMOMs. Of course, just like anything, you can add weight every week, which I've got in this component here. We've got every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, one snatch at 80%. This is one of my favorite ways to develop this snatch. Each week you add 1% to your snatch until you get to the point where you're not able to successfully complete all 10 reps unbroken. That also goes for if you, let's say you do week 1 at 80%, you fail your 3rd rep on the 3rd minute, then you would redo the same percentage next week until you got all 10 done. It's kind of like a dynamic double progression where you have to be accurate and you also have to hit the weight that's required. So it is really quite effective, but simply each week you increase the EMOM by 1%. So simple, that's just a classic linear progression for that one. When we look at the other forms of progression, volumizing is very easy to do with EMOMs. So in this stage, we've got every minute on the minute for 10 minutes. On the odd, 15-12 calories, respectively on the rower, on the even 15 burpees. Week 2, you can just go up by the minutes of the EMOM, so increase the volume and the length of the workout. So instead of every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, it's now every minute on the minute for 12 minutes. So you've added literally an extra 15 cal row, an extra 15 burpees. And then the next week it would be 14 minutes, so it's 2 extra rounds and so on and so forth. And then it works the other way as well, where you can increase the calories of the row and the burpees, but keep it at the 10-minute time domain. So now you're increasing intensity, you're reducing rest, and it's really demanding more from the athlete, trying to get more out of that EMOM. So there are just a couple cool ways that you can look at progressive overload. The lastly is one of the different types of EMOMs that I truly enjoy, which is the fight gone bad. The reason why I like this one is because it's not so much about setting a set amount of reps that the person hits. It's setting a time domain and using the pressure of the time domain to get the athlete to perform as many reps as possible. In this case, fight gone bad is 3 rounds through, performing max reps of 5 different movements: wall balls, sumo high pulls, box jumps, push press, and calories on the road. You rest a minute at the end, which is counting as part of the EMOM because you've got 6 minutes. The final minute is the rest minute. You restart again and try and match your score 3 times in a row. Your total score is the workout score. I think that one's really good. It was also created to help fighters imitate rounds of boxing and MMA. They're 3 5-minute rounds with the 1-minute break, very close to imitating that. Now let's talk about how to program your own EMOM. A couple of things you should look for using all of the variables that we've got above. So we've got every minute on the minute for 12 minutes. Now, of course, I picked the 12 minutes because obviously the other 2 have 10 minutes. The only reason I've gone up by 2 because we're doing a triplet. I could go every minute on the minute for 9, but I want 4 rounds and not 3. Makes things a little bit easier. Let's add some movements. First round, one of the best things you can add is running. 200 meters of running is around about 40 to 50 seconds for your average athlete, giving them about a 10-second transition when they get inside. Obviously, you're going to navigate the gym depending on how large your gym is, how long it takes you to get from the start of your gym to your equipment. That's usually enough time for people to pretty much walk to the next point of their workout and get started. And it's also such a basic component that pretty much anyone can do. Easy buy-in, let's use that. From here, we can take some of the inspiration from the other workouts. We can look at how we're going to progress the 200-meter run. You might necessarily not progress the 200-meter run in this case. If you're looking at progressing your EMOM, you might choose 2 other movements, something that you really struggle at and maybe something you're good at, and progress the one that you kind of struggle at more, or progress 2 of the movements and keep the run the same. I don't know about you, but it's going to be quite hard to run a little bit faster than 200 meters. 210 meters could work, but it's probably a little bit too kind of monotonous to work out. Oh shit, where's the extra 10 meter mark? Maybe the goal for the run could be trying to push the time of how quickly you can complete the run, and that would be a good way to progressively overload. Week 1, you might hit 50 seconds for your lap. Week 2, you might get 48. Week 3, 45. So you've easily got an improvement in the amount of time it takes you to complete the run. Looking at the second movement, I like to use something a little bit more dynamic. Let's use a movement that uses a lot of body parts And it complements running quite well. I think workouts like Nancy, running and overhead squats is such a good combination, and it works so many different parts of the body. It's a good overall movement. Yes, there's a mobility buy-in for a lot of people, but for this sake, let's just assume that you have great mobility like me. Not. Let's write it down. So overhead squats, how many reps? Well, you've got to think about, you want to try and look at aiming for about 40 to 50 seconds, like I said, for the work. So the athlete gets a little bit of rest to change over, and they feel like they've earned some rest. Even though the goal is not to earn the rest, it gives that perception that if I finish quicker, I'm going to get more rest. That's never ever been a good idea. Finishing quicker on any EMOM, any component, has never gone the way that people think. It's like, well, yeah, you finish quicker, but your heart rate's now higher, so you're going to struggle more on the next component. But we don't tell them that. We've gone 10 to 15 overhead squats at 50 and 35 kilos respectively. I mean, depending on the level of athlete, of course, you can scale the weight down, you can reduce the reps. I'd say 15 would be probably better for the most average athletes looking at performing overhead squats. Yes, the weight's probably a little bit heavy. This is more thinking of my standards and how I would perform this workout. 50 being quite a decent weight to pump out, especially if you're going to go through 4 rounds at 60 total overhead squats. That's quite a lot of volume, so you want to keep the weight towards the lighter side. So if you feel like that's kind of closer to your 1RM, maybe 35, 25 would be a better weight for you. Looking at the last movement to complement that, we've covered a lot of the body with these 2 movements already. One of the movements that I like is core. Core is a good additive to it. It lowers the heart rate slightly, but it's also working a muscle group that's not really focused too much with the overhead squat and the run. Kind of giving that bit of a disparity there. And I'm going to use the hollow rock as a good movement. It's just active and moving rather than just statically holding there for 30 seconds. But I'd probably add in something like 20 to 30 hollow rocks to round out this workout nicely. Now let's look at progressively overloading this component. Like I mentioned with the run, looking for a better time would probably be the most ideal part of this workout, as trying to necessarily increase the run might not go to standard because the time it takes to complete the run is just going to get too long, and it's going to go well over that 1 minute, and you're going to end up playing an AMRAP rather than an EMOM. So like I said with the run, let's just try and increase the intensity of our split times and aim for a better split time on the next week. With the EMOM itself, you could add an extra round on that EMOM, go for another 2 rounds if you're looking at increasing the volume, and if you feel like that's enough work that you get enough recovery after each round, by adding more volume, you're going to be able to add more capacity to your training. So maybe going from the 12 round EMOM to a 15 round could be a good application of progressive overload. I'm pretty happy with the overhead squats. The only thing really here that I look at increasing as far as it goes is more the weight. Yes, if we're hitting 10 reps on the first week, you can aim for 11 on the second week, 12, 13, 14, always get to 15. Once you get to 15, any more than that, it's going to be the same thing as the run. It's going to end up taking too much time up. So I'd be looking at the weight as a progression. Let's say you were doing that 40-30, maybe at 45, 32 and a half might be a better progression for you. But for my case, I'm going to go 60 and 43. Finally, the hollow rocks. This is a pretty simple one to add a bit more difficulty to. You could increase the difficulty of the movement, change it to a V-up instead of a hollow rock, a bit more of a dynamic movement, a bit more explosive, or you could add a bit of a weighted component to the hollow rock. But I like the V-up better, upgrading it to that maybe after the 2nd or 3rd week, not necessarily straight away, but it's a good component to add in there that has a bit more roundness to the workout. And there you have it, guys. There's just a simple way to look at EMOMs and how to program a simple EMOM for yourself. Some different ways. Obviously, this is not the perfect way. There's way better ways to program an EMOM. I just freeballed it on the spot. But what are your thoughts? What are you looking at needing help programming on? Leave them in the comments down below. This video really came up with the idea of this video was really just about doing some EMOMs myself, and I love EMOMs as a component. Super simple to program, and I'm going to have more EMOMs on my website with the blog post that goes with this video. It'll be in the link down below if you're looking at a few extra EMOM ideas for your home training.